At the Bracken Library, I can walk in and receive immediate attention. They remember my name.
It's incredibly important in graduate school to find the people who will motivate you to be successful. I think especially for me, because I moved across the country to come to this program and I didn't know anyone, it was very important that I found people who would support me on my graduate school journey.
Never be afraid to ask for help from your peers, from your faculty. Like, everyone here is here to support you, and so you're here to support them as well. So, you know, be a part of the community, engage the community, you know, don't be shy about it. I mean, that's really what you're learning is not just from your teachers, it's from everyone around you.
The first few days of grad school they were challenging because it's a different pace of work. During the day I was a teacher, and in the evenings I was a graduate student. So learning to juggle that around was a little bit difficult. But we had mentors in place, we had professors. Our professors left their doors open for us to go ask questions, to just talk.
My advice for incoming graduate students would be prepared to be challenged, be prepared to probably doubt half of everything you're doing for the first semester. That's normal. And it's not going to be easy. That's not why you're at graduate school. So be prepared to go through those challenges, but that is why you're here, to be challenged.
Work hard and take chances, because this is the time. This is the time to be doing that. You're in a great place to be pushing yourself hard, learning and getting yourself out there and taking risks.
Make the most out of your time here. It's going to fly by so fast. And the thing is, there's so many opportunities that this university provides, and you really want to utilize the time while you're here because you can accomplish some amazing things while you're here, and it's a great decision to come to this university, I assure you that.
There's so many places for you to see, so I would definitely encourage you to get out there and meet new people, step outside of your comfort zone. After all, you are in a new space, so try to do something new.
Graduate school will give you the discipline and the freedom to go out and pursue those ideas that you had, that you always wanted to bring to fruition. It gives you the time and it gives you the resources to make those things happen. And that's how the Healing Wall came to be. That's how my graduate school creative project came to be. And it's a wonderful time to have that freedom to, you know, build your great ideas and share them with the world.
When I think about the person that I was when I first started Ball State 3 years ago and the person that I am now, I believe that the main difference is that I have grown so much more confident. I wouldn't be the same person if I didn't have the opportunities that I had here.
Revolutionary.
Challenging.
Edifying.
Revelatory.
Nurturing.
Humbling.
Life-changing.
Transformative.
Find what you're passionate about and pursue that, because your life isn't about the rewards you get, such as salary or benefits. It's about the quality of life that you can leave for others behind you. That's your legacy.
My name is Debbie Mix, and I'm an Acting Associate Dean of the Graduate School here at Ball State. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for the Graduate Assistant Orientation webinar. I'm going to let my other panelists here introduce themselves, and then we'll just get going.
Okay. Welcome. My name is Amy Blackford. I'm Director of Graduate Retention and Operations.
My name is Mike Gilliland. I'm the Director of Student Rights and Community Standards.
Hi, I'm Morgan Gross. I'm a graduate student at Ball State. I'm in the English department, and I'm working on a PhD in rhetoric and composition.
All right. Well, today we're here to talk about the graduate assistant experience, some things that you can expect and anticipate, maybe some things that you didn't know about. We really encourage you to log in and ask questions at any point. Don't be shy. And I think at this point we'll just go ahead and get started.
Great.
All right. So I think probably the first question that I would ask is, what are some of the different kinds of assistantships that one can have?
That's a terrific question, because there's a lot of assistantships around campus. Some are in individual programs of study, so you might be teaching a class or working closely with a faculty member on her research. Some are in other programs around campus. We have graduate assistants in the graduate school, of course. The library has graduate assistants. So people all over campus are working in those roles. I'm going to let you all talk about the assistantships you have and how those work for you. And Morgan, I think I'll ask you to go first, because I know you've held 2 different flavors of assistantship.
Yeah, I've actually had all 3.
Oh, all 3. I'm sorry.
I've dabbled. So I guess my primary assistantship is a teaching one. I teach in the English department, mostly composition courses, but I've also had the chance to teach some upper-level English classes. And then starting my 2nd year of grad school, I also got to take on some administrative responsibilities with my assistantship too, working for the writing program as an assistant director, and I'll be starting with the Writing Center this coming year, and also some administrative work with the graduate school as well. And this summer I had an RA, a research assistantship, with one of the faculty in the English department doing some different research tasks for her. So kind of, you know, all 3 of them.
The assistantship in my office is filled by one of the students in the Student Affairs and Higher Education program, and those folks are very crucial to our operation, both across our division and in my office. They're standing in for me and the assistant director. They play a professional role in meeting with students, assessing what needs to happen with them, and making assignments. They're doing everything from taking in applications for emergency loans and allocating monies. So they've got a lot of responsibility. It's really important that we've got them. We wouldn't be able to do our job, accomplish our mission without them.
And did you also have a graduate assistantship when you were in graduate school?
I did. During my doctoral work, I was an administrative assistant. I had an administrative assistantship where I was working with the graduate school, actually, and doing some technical work. I also spent some time in a teaching role in statistics, and also helped support the beginning of a new magazine. So yeah, I had some great experiences. That was my doctoral work.
Sounds fantastic.
That's excellent. That's a really broad range of opportunities. Given that they're all so broad in the different work environments, why should a graduate assistant consider themselves professionals at this stage of the game?
You want me to take that one first?
That'd be great.
Okay. Well, I know, speaking from my office, and I think this is true of a lot of folks, is that number one, a number of graduate assistants are coming from professional roles. Mm-hmm. They're taking a break from full-time work, and they're getting some additional education. We would certainly expect them to play a professional role, during that period of time before they go back out to wherever they go next. For those folks who are at the beginning of their career, there's no better time than now to begin acting and acting like a professional, thinking of yourself as a professional, coming to understand the ethics of a particular discipline, and how do I operate within a professional environment with other professionals and be seen as a professional. And that starts with acting like one and being considered as one.
Absolutely.
I think too, if you take yourself seriously as a professional, that's going to lead the people who are supervising you in your assistantship role to see you in that light, and maybe to give you a little bit more responsibility, to recognize, okay, this person doesn't need me to babysit them. This person is somebody who's going to take initiative or who is going to bring interesting ideas to the table. One of the things I really love to see from my perspective at the graduate school is maybe a student who has a research position with another faculty member bringing, developing a role in that research and maybe leading to publication or to a conference presentation, which I think is a really important professional milestone. The administrative work, I think you're building your resume, right, to move on to the next stage in your career, whether that's going directly back into the work world, whether that's continuing on for further education, whether the work you're envisioning is within academia or outside of it. That seems really important as well.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. At this point, we've talked a lot about the different roles. We've talked a lot about professionalism in those positions. Goal setting sounds like it would probably be very important in that process. So how is personal goal setting important? And I think I would probably ask Morgan to maybe address that first, given that you're right there in the middle of it right now.
Yeah, I think it's important, and this is part of being a professional in general, to go into something and figure out how you can own it. So one of the ways that you can own your assistantship position is by thinking about what you want to get out of it. So you maybe want to set some personal goals. I'll give you an example. One thing that I really wanted to do, since I had already taught a lot of composition courses, was be able to teach some of those upper level courses and have that opportunity. Of course, I had to prove myself first as a teacher, and then also request that I be able to. I don't think anyone would have just handed me an upper level course. I had to say, I'm interested in this and want to take it on. And so that was a personal goal of mine. But I think you can also get in your position, figure it out, and also identify needs that exist there. Like, I see this big picture. I think that we could work on this thing. And so you help set goals for whatever it is you're working with. That's important too. So
I think too it might feed into how do you find a balance between yourself as a student taking classes, meeting those milestones, working within those structures, and as somebody who is on a professional path doing important work within your program or somewhere else in the institution, right? And so part of that goal setting too needs to be bound up with thinking about balance, setting goals that say, I want to be able to give my full attention to one thing. And so in order to be able to maybe fully focus on the paper I'm working on, I need to be able to make sure I take care of some of the other tasks for my assistantship or something like that to find that balance. And so I think that's part of the package too.
And I think just to kind of add to that is what do you need to say no to?
Yes.
You're going to have more opportunities that you'd like to take advantage of than you could possibly take advantage of. And the goals that you have, both short term within your program and then later, is part of helping to guide the choices that you're going to make. Because, again, there's not enough time to do all of that.
Yeah,
that's the truth.
Yes. Well, I think if you don't know already, you're going to find out very quickly that in graduate school you are going to be in a state of transition. And you're going to you're going to move from consuming knowledge to producing it. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah. So I think as an undergraduate, and I don't, some of you are probably maybe moving directly from your undergraduate institutions into graduate school. Some of you may have earned a bachelor's degree a while back and are coming back to graduate school. But making that transition, I think it is partly a mental shift in terms of how you see yourself engaging with the material in the classroom. And so maybe as an undergraduate, it was safe to kind of lay back and to let the professor sort of guide you exactly where she wanted you to go, or to tell you what was going to be on the test even. And I think in graduate school, one of the shifts is that students are working toward becoming peers to faculty members. And so part of that is figuring out how to be part of that educational community, part of that scholarly community. So figuring out how to participate in a more substantive way, rather than just figuring out how to absorb all of that information and learn a set of conventions. Now you've got to participate in those conventions in a real way. So I think that's one of the big shifts, maybe from the big transitions from moving from undergrad to graduate school. But I don't know, are there other ways that you all think that graduate school is different from maybe an undergraduate experience?
That's the big one. I mean, you have more expectations placed on you by your professors and also your supervisors when you're in these assistantship positions. And part of becoming a professional and developing that strong work ethic is really figuring out how to be self-motivated. So you talked about scheduling, time management, learning to say no to things so you can prioritize others. It just requires being able to see these are my long-term goals, my short-term goals that feed into that. These are the things that I need to do, and these are the things that I really want to do, and how do I find that motivation even when it gets hard and even when I struggle to, figure out how I can turn myself into this person that I want to be and move from graduate school to my career and make that transition smooth.
I think personally for me, when I went through the graduate process, my biggest challenges were not related to the consumption of knowledge, that academic aspect for me personally. Probably the greatest challenges that I had were that balance that you had talked about earlier, and finding a way to balance the commitments that you have now that maybe you didn't have as an undergraduate student. As an undergraduate student, I did not have a family and I did not work full time, and as a graduate student I did, and so there was a big shift for me with that. The other thing that I just want to share is that going into a graduate position or going into a graduate program was something that I originally didn't come up with on my own, and my mentor really guided me towards that, and I felt a little unprepared. I was prepared, but I felt a little unprepared, and I felt like I was somehow different from everybody else that was in the class or in the program. And it's referred to a lot as imposter syndrome. And I would just encourage you to acknowledge when you go through that experience, to realize that it's something that, it's just sort of a self-talk, a negative self-talk, and to really work out of that, because you definitely belong in your graduate program.
Sierra Johnson said something really smart about imposter syndrome and ways to combat it in another webinar that we did with the grad school. She's one of the grad school ambassadors. And I remember she said, you have to remind yourself, even if you feel like you're not worthy or you're not living up to those expectations that are being put on you, or you can't do it, anytime you're doubting yourself, you have to remember you got here, someone believed in you. Just, find that spark, believe in yourself again. You can make it through. Not everything's going to be perfect, but you're going to figure it out and you can do it. So
I'm so glad you shared that. I remember hearing that, and that was really motivational. Yeah. I really liked that. All right. Speaking of motivation, I think one of the big questions is, why should a GA be self-motivated and take initiative in this process? Again, going from that undergraduate to that graduate, you're no longer in that passive role. You're being more of a leader in both your educational and your professional development.
Well, I think one of the things that can happen, and I don't want to harp on imposter syndrome here, but I think one of the things that happens when you get stuck, when you start feeling like, oh, I'm the only one who's struggling, I'm the only one who doesn't understand this, is that it can really paralyze you.
Yes.
And finding that belief in yourself that says, you know what, I deserve to ask a question, or maybe it's not just me who doesn't understand this this thing that we're supposed to be reading, or who is confused about this concept, or is struggling with this experiment. I think part of that self-motivation, part of that initiative taking is one of the ways to get out of being stuck, so that you don't wind up feeling like I'm the only one. You go and see your professor, talk to your peers in your class, maybe share some of the things that you're excited about, but also some of the things that are giving you trouble. I know when I was a graduate student, it was really important to me to have a writing group, especially when I got to that last part of my of the process, writing the dissertation, just to have other people I was talking to and connecting with. And I think that's true in the professional aspects of your position here as well. It's important to connect to other GAs in your program, in your department, to think about how are you handling this, or this thing happened in my class, and I wasn't sure what to say. How are you getting through this pile of work, right? That some of that has to do with talking to your peers and kind of crowdsourcing solutions, not in a like, oh, I'm so panicky, I don't know what to do way, but just in a, I have this particular problem, help me think of some ideas for how do I handle this student who's dominating class discussion, or how do I stay on top of the task list that my supervisor is giving me, or how do I have this difficult conversation that I know is part of my job, but I've never had to tell somebody this thing before. Yeah.
Well, and it goes back to the earlier question about why should you consider this a professional role? Because that's what professionals do. They take initiative. They develop direction for themselves. I know part of for one of the conversations that I have with the assistants, GAs who come into my office, is that, after training, I don't expect you to ask permission to do the things you're supposed to do. I expect consultation when you need it, because that's what professionals do with each other. They consult with each other, but they don't ask permission. They do. And so that's another piece of it, is that's just part of the expectation now.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. One way, you had told a story earlier about a roommate that had helped you throughout the process as you kind of got stuck in little pieces. Do you want to share maybe about that?
Yeah, I found, well, maybe talk a little bit about mentorship later, but I found a mentor in a graduate student in my same program who had started the program 2 years before I did. And so we became quick friends, and she was a great resource for me. Anytime I, didn't know what was coming up or what to expect or how to do a thing or what this meant, I always went to her first. And she was so supportive and gave me so much good information, and I've really tried. She's since graduated and gotten a nice job and moved away, and I miss her, but I've tried to take on what she did for me and help other incoming grad students too, to kind of pay it forward, just because she was really made a big difference in the first couple of years of me starting the degree here. So.
That's a great idea. I think definitely finding peers that are there or further on is definitely one way that can help you figure out how to get unstuck, whether it's professional or academic.
I think too, in the end, you can't be afraid to ask questions. And when I say that, I don't mean, right, it's not ask every question. Is it okay if can I do, should I, right? Maybe the first time through you ask a lot of questions, but then as you get more confident, right, you don't want to be so fearful that you don't do your job. But on the other hand, you also don't want to forge ahead thinking well, I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to handle this experiment, but I'm going to I'm going to do what I think. I would much rather have somebody come to me and say, I think you're asking for X, but I'm worried you actually want me to do Y. Can you help me understand the parameters of this task or this assignment? Right? Come and ask one. Come and ask a set of thoughtful questions that show here's the work I've done at this point to find my own answers, and now here's where I need you as my supervisor to step in.
Absolutely.
And if you're in a teaching assistantship, you're going to be on the other side of this too, telling your own students the same thing.
That's right.
Please, students,
exactly right.
Google
be
it.
solution-oriented as much as possible, and then ask.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think probably a big issue for anybody is social media. It's always wondering how much to share, what to share. But for graduate assistants in particular, I think that that's definitely something to think about as they prepare to go into the academic world. So why should they be concerned about it?
Well, I'm going to start with, I'll start by talking about social media vis-a-vis your grad assistantship, right? Because I know a lot of us, social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or Snap, whatever that is, certainly it becomes a place to let off some steam and to speak to some frustrations. But I think you need to be very careful about, you don't want to get on Twitter and complain about your students. You could get on Twitter and rave about your students, right? I think that's fantastic, right? You don't want to get on Facebook and complain about your advisor, right? You can get on Facebook and say great things about your advisor. I mean, not so much that you seem like a suck-up or anything, but I think as a GA, you're representing your program, the university, and your professional trajectory. And so I think you want to be really careful about thinking, yes, this is a funny story about a kooky thing a student wrote, in a paper because of a typo or something. But I think when you blur that line towards, oh, it seems like she's making fun of her students, right? That is something that people are going to look back through your social media trail and say, wow, she has been a little bit loosey-goosey about our about student information, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think coming from the rhetoric and composition program too, I'm always thinking about what are you doing to craft your identity? And your social media is just a reflection of your identity. So how do you want people to see you, and which people? What are your privacy settings? Those are things to be thinking
after
about.
The webinar is over, go check your privacy settings on Facebook and those sites. Think very carefully about what you're tweeting.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we have a question from one of our viewers. One of the important things that I'm sure that you all are wondering about is when you'll find out what your GA position is going to be. I mean, a title is great, but it does not encapsulate all those tasks. So did you want to maybe talk about when they'll start to find out or how they can approach that process?
I think, to be honest, and I know this is a really frustrating answer, but some of that is going to vary by your graduate program. So some of you may have some particular orientation events that will happen within, if you have a GA position in a particular department, the department that you're getting a graduate degree in, there may be some additional orientation events where they will kind of get you settled into that, to those GA roles. Some of it may, it may be that they are still making assignments for incoming students for which faculty are they going to work with, or which offices are they going to work in. But I think your best bet on getting some of those answers is to contact the graduate director from the program that you're joining, or if you're not working in your home academic program, to contact whoever the supervisor is for the office that you're going to be working in. Certainly people are sorting those things out right now, and you're absolutely right to want to know. So after you check your privacy settings, your next task is to send an email to your graduate director in the program that you're going on to join, or to the contact person you had when you learned that you had a GA position.
Great, okay. And that was an excellent question, thank you.
Yes.
Graduate students are busy people. They have their work, they have their academics, they have their personal life, and it gets really difficult to balance things. So do you guys have any recommendations on how to find that work-life balance?
That's hard. I wish, yeah. I wish I'd solved all those problems. I think, I hope this doesn't sound frivolous, but I think one really important part to finding that balance is remembering to have a life outside of graduate school, outside of classes and your GA position. You know, that if you remember to make time for your dog, or to go for a run, or to bake cookies, or to watch Game of Thrones, or whatever the thing is that you just love to do. Make sure that as you're thinking about, here's what I'm going to do this week, that you are giving yourself real time to decompress and to do something that makes you feel like yourself. Yeah. I think that's really important. And one other piece of advice on that note that I'd like to share is be honest with yourself about what kind of work you can do in what circumstances, right? Are you a person who needs to write or read, or is just as sharpest in the morning, right? Are you somebody who can stay up until 3 or 4 in the morning and be fully functional at those hours? Can you, if you go sit in a coffee shop or at the laundromat, what kinds of things can you concentrate on in those contexts, and set yourself up for success, so that when you're trying to do those things, that you do the right task at the right time of day, in the right setting. And so that you're not trying to do heavy-duty intellectual work at 2 in the morning if your brain has turned off at 11 o'clock. So I think now is a really good time to think about, when am I at my best for what kinds of tasks?
I think for me personally, when I went through my second master's, I suddenly found myself with 2 young children, and they needed time with me just as much as I needed time with them. And so I had to be really strategic about my time and how I would use it. I was working full time, and so I decided not to go to lunch every day with my group of friends. And instead what I would do is take that time and go find a quiet spot, take my lunch with me, and read my chapters, because that was a phenomenal way for me to get caught up on my reading without feeling like I was shortchanging my children or my husband at home. You can use that time to do a lot of things, like work out or what have you, but think about where there are pockets of time and how you might be able to repurpose them slightly, just for a little bit. And don't get rid of those other things completely, because again, it's about balance. But think about where there are pockets of time.
One thing that I'd add is maybe rethinking what we mean by balance. When one goes on vacation, that's not a work-life balance. That's shifted towards the rest of your life outside of work. And no one would expect that there be a balance during that time. There are going to be times during the school year when not only you, but everybody around you is going to be much more on the end of the work part. Again, no balance there. But that's part of it. There's a certain rhythm to that. And then you sort of enjoy those times when you are actually balanced, whatever that means. But knowing that it's often kind of a moving from one to the other at different points in time.
Yeah, that's a really great point. How about you, Morgan? Do you have any little tips or tricks?
Yeah, I'm the one doing it, you guys.
Yeah.
No, what you guys said is all really true. I mean, like, personally, the thing that brings me down is if I get so stuck on work that I forget to move around, because all the work I do is like sitting at a computer, reading, it's all very stationary, and I just like have to have some exercise in my life to feel good about what I'm doing. So just one thing that I actually did to help with that is I signed up for some races, and then I would like have to have a training schedule for the races, and it would motivate me to both dedicate some time to exercising in between all the work that I was doing, and it made the work I was doing better, really. So
that's so smart.
Very smart. I think probably one thing that a lot of people might wonder, and maybe they're not asking, but definitely have on their mind, is what other kinds of benefits besides financial might there be to an assistantship?
Well, we've talked a lot about the professionalizing aspects of assistantship work, right? That you're learning how to do the job you've got your eye on, whether that's working in student affairs or working in a chemistry lab or working as an architect, right? You're building those skills. You're seeing what does it look like to do that job every day. And I think that's such a tremendous benefit. I think, too, one of the benefits, and maybe for some of us it's one of the challenges, is learning to network, right? Learning how to talk to the faculty member who is doing research that really inspires you, and taking that initiative to figure out, how could I work for him in the fall? Or paying attention to how classes are assigned and figuring out how do I put myself in a position to be eligible to teach that class, because those are really professionalizing experiences too, right? It's how do you learn to make connections in a new job? How do you set yourself up to ask for a raise or for new responsibilities? How do you learn to navigate those things? And I think a graduate assistantship is such a marvelous place to build those skills in new contexts, maybe semester to semester or maybe from year to year, depending on how your position is assigned.
Absolutely. You had mentioned earlier about mentorship, and I think that was definitely a topic that we wanted to talk about today. And I've shared this in some of the emails that I've sent to you, but one of the big things you want to think about is, why is mentorship, being one and having one, because you can serve in both roles as a student, why is it important for graduate assistants?
I think, you come to graduate school and it's a lot, right? There's a lot going on. It can be a little dazzling, a little overwhelming, and figuring out how to navigate those processes, how to find answers to some of those questions that we've been talking about, right? How do you find balance? How do you get through the work? What do you do when the class resists your direction? I think it's really wonderful to have a mentor, to have somebody who maybe feels a few steps ahead of where you want, a few steps ahead of you, but somewhere that you want to be, whether that's a couple years further along in the program, or doing a faculty member, or administrative in an administrative position that you think like, oh, I would like to do Mike's job. Or Amy's job, right? How do I figure out, what skills she needed to get there, and then how can I go on and build those onto my resume?
And I would just say too, like, some programs have mentorship built into them. Some don't. So in case you're in one that doesn't, and even one that does really, this is another argument for becoming a professional. The better work you're doing, the more someone's going to want to be your mentor too. They don't just hand out their time for free. They got to have some buy-in, like they see that you've got potential and they want to help you out. So it's about making good impressions, and then knowing like when to reach out to people and when to leave them alone, and all of those kinds of nuanced things.
Absolutely. And I would just recommend, don't overlook the value of a mentor, because in your graduate program, you are very focused on a particular area or a field, and you're incredibly laser focused on the courses and the content and the responsibilities. And a mentor can sometimes sort of help you see the forest for the trees, if you will, and they'll help you just sort of realize that maybe I need to take a step back, and they just have a different perspective on things. So definitely don't overlook that. But before too much time passes, I wanted to make sure that we were able to share a very short video from our colleague, Courtney Quinn, and she's going to talk with you about the important part of the paperwork and the different responsibilities that you're going to have in order to make sure that you're able to start in your assistantship. So let's watch the video.
Hello, I'm Courtney Quinn, the Graduate School Secretary. My goal is to help you navigate the graduate assistantship contract process with a graduate school. I'll share the requirements, where to sign your contract, and what to bring when you sign. First, let me mention that we use the shortened version of GA when referencing graduate assistants. Also, our communications regarding your GA contract occur through the Ball State email. This is considered official communication, so be sure to check your Ball State email frequently. Once you've secured an assistantship from a department, the approval process begins. The graduate school is responsible for ensuring that you've met the requirements to qualify for an assistantship. These requirements are: you must have a regular admission status, not conditional or probationary. You cannot have any holds on your account, such as a bursar, health center, or parking services. The graduate school must have your final official transcripts on file. Please be sure to request a final transcript from your previous institution once your degree has been conferred, and provide this to the graduate school. Master students are required to have a minimum GPA of 2.75 or 3.0 in the latter half of the previous degree program to qualify, and must maintain a minimum GPA of 3.0. Doctoral students are required to have and maintain a minimum GPA of 3.2. If any of these requirements are not met, you will receive an email to let you know what needs to be accomplished to complete the process. Your GA contract will not be processed until these requirements are met. The financial aid office is then notified of your tuition award. Once your contract is approved, you will receive an email from the graduate school with instructions for signing and verifying employment. All contracts must be signed in person at the graduate school in West Quad 100. Because Ball State University cooperates with the federal government in electronic verification of employment eligibility, all employees are required to report their Social Security number. To establish identity and employment authorization, you will need to bring acceptable documents, which include, but are not limited to, either a passport or state-issued ID with your Social Security card or birth certificate. A complete list of acceptable documents will be included in the email instructions you receive. All documents must be unexpired and in original form and completed by the third day of work. Please note that if you are an international student and do not have a Social Security card, the process for obtaining this will be outlined when you attend an international student orientation session. Your stipend will be directly deposited to your bank account. So after signing your contract, you will need to go to the payroll office in the administration building, room G29, to complete tax forms and to set up your direct deposit. You can find additional details in regards to benefits and expectations of graduate assistantships on the graduate school website. I hope this overview has given you some insight into the process. If you have any questions, please contact me by email. Thank you. Welcome to Ball State University. I look forward to meeting you.
Okay. Before we move on to any other content, I just want to be sure and remind you that you can always type in any questions that you might have. As we touched on earlier, there's no such thing as a bad question. We definitely encourage, and we'd be happy to help and answer however we can. But I really wanted to take advantage of your expertise, Mike, and ask you if you could share a little bit of information or some thoughts on how graduate assistants, especially those in teaching positions, should handle issues related to confidentiality.
Okay, that's a great question, and it's one that that is tough for a lot of folks to handle. It's not just students and graduate assistants. First of all, keep in mind there's a couple of different concepts that are related. Confidentiality is one of them. Privacy is another one. Students have the right to privacy to their records, and then there's the issue of confidentiality, which is, you know, if we know something, are we allowed to tell somebody else about it? Let me take the privacy part first, and that's with student records. One possible thing, especially for those of you who are doing teaching assistantships, you might get a phone call from a parent asking you, how is my son or daughter doing? That student's records, including your, the tests, et cetera, are private to that student, and you're not in a position to share that information with the parent. You are able to share that information with, say, your supervisor or the program director in your department, but that's sort of people inside. But in general, you're not able to share it with that parent unless you have that student's permission to do that. And so in a case like that, there's a couple of different things. First of all, is that letting them know you really can't do that, and suggesting that they speak with their son or daughter, because we want their son or daughter to be sharing that information, but also letting them know that if they have a conversation with their son or daughter, that student gives you permission, then you could. But in a lot of cases, if the student can give you permission, they can also tell their parents. Mm-hmm. Bottom line with privacy, when you're talking about providing information about students outside of the institution, it's pretty limited without that student's permission. When it comes to sharing information inside the institution, it's really pretty wide open. You don't want to tell everybody, but again, it's to those people who have a legitimate educational need to know. Then with confidentiality, and this goes to a couple of different things, is, for instance, if a student shares something with you that they want you to keep confidential, in other words, tell nobody else, that should be a red flag for you, that you may be in a position where you need to tell the student, I'm not sure that I can guarantee that. There's actually very few of us at the institution that can guarantee confidentiality. Counselors, health practitioners, our victim services advocate, but for the most part, most of us are not in position to assure confidentiality. And it's important it's important and ethical to tell a student that up front. But then if a student wants to tell you that, you may have a responsibility to share it further, either for that student's benefit or because it's an obligation that you have with the institution. It's hard to predict and this might be a great question for you. I mean, what kinds of situations do you get? But for instance, if you're building good relationships, healthy relationships with students that you may be teaching or advising or supervising in a lab or something like that, they're going to learn to trust you. Mm-hmm. And you may be the one person that they do trust to share something really important. There may be some circumstances where the law, ethical standards, or both, or the expectations of your department, your supervisor, require that you share that with somebody else to help make sure that the right things happen at the right time for that student. Mm-hmm. Like I said, does that sound familiar?
Yeah, well, teaching composition classes, I have less than 25 students in all my classes, so they do often feel like I'm the one that they want to come to because they know me more than their professors in classes that are, 100 plus students. But I think the most important thing for me is knowing what are the campus resources available, that I'm not a qualified counselor, that I do need to turn them over to some people who are more qualified to help with certain things. So if I know the resources, I can help them find those resources.
That's a great response, yeah.
That's excellent. Those are some wonderful examples. But we did have a question from the audience, so I'm going to go back to that. And their question was with regard to flexible hours in a graduate assistant position. Can they get them? And that is really, I think, going to vary from position to position.
It really is. So if you have a full-time graduate assistantship, that's 20 hours a week. A half-time assistantship is 10 hours a week. And after that, it's going to depend on what kind of assistantship you have, right? If you are teaching a class, there's no flexibility in when that class is. You need to be there then. But there is flexibility on when you might hold office hours or when you do your class prep. If you have a research position, I think it's going to depend on the nature of the research, right? And on the faculty supervisor, what kind of time he or she, needs to be around. I think those are good questions to ask as you settle into the position, to sort of think about how they're going to organize their time and to what extent that time is flexible.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. For those graduate assistants with teaching duties, I'm going to come back to you, Mike.
Okay.
How should they handle disruption in the classroom? What should they do when a student is distressed, and what obligations do they have to report issues that seem serious? You touched on that a little bit, but if you could elaborate.
I think when it comes to disruptions in the classroom, that's always if one is ever asking the question is, should I tell somebody else about this? Then the answer is probably yes. I would go with that. But when something is disruptive in the classroom, if you're being distracted by it or you see other students being distracted by it, then if you're the teacher, you've got a responsibility to deal with that. And there's a lot of there's a lot of different techniques. It depends. What I would always recommend is thinking about responding to disruption progressively. If somebody is looking at their phone, don't call them out in the middle of class. Deal with that afterwards, quietly, one-on-one. Because, again, that's something that should stop there. If it doesn't, then you may have to take the next step. There may be bigger disruptions or distractions that don't allow you to take the time to meet with them afterwards. In general, you really don't want to try to deal with disruption in the classroom if you can handle it in a way that's quiet and subtle. Oh yes, calling out students in the middle of a class, that's always a last resort. That's always a last resort. And again, keep in mind that there are that the students, other students in the classroom are going to expect that you do something about it, but you're not alone. You're never alone. You have a supervising teacher or a department chair or an assistant chair. My office supports teachers. In fact, I think now, I'm not sure that you and I have ever worked together, but I've had graduate assistants call me before with their supervising teacher, and we'd consult and work out a plan and come back to it with the idea that we're helping each other and the students in that classroom return to a good learning environment.
And you might not, if it's your first semester teaching, you might not really know what kinds of disruptions to expect, but it's a learning process, and that's part of professionalizing and figuring things out. You have to see what's going to happen and then know, okay, I need to next semester have some kind of cell phone policy, already set up so that I can go back to that when I need to, and maybe it'll help, avoid encountering problems altogether.
One thing I would always recommend is either by yourself or preferably with somebody who's more experienced, is sitting down before you go to class that first time and thinking about, besides what am I going to teach and how I'm going to teach it, is what do I want this learning environment to be? And then that first day, in addition to all the other things you have to do, like checking the roster and going through your syllabus, is having a conversation with your students about what do we need to do together to make this a good learning environment for all of us? What do you expect of me? What do I expect of you? What should we expect of each other? And I would consider that time well invested, hopefully to stave off or prevent problems later on in the semester.
That's a really excellent point. That's some great advice. Thank you both. There's going to be a lot of trainings that the graduate assistants are going to have to do, but one of them that's really important is the Think About It training.
Yep.
Could you share a little bit about that?
Yes. It's a required training. It's done online, and graduate students will probably, I believe, they will get an invitation to begin it shortly after school begins. And just so you know, all new faculty and employees are required to take it. All new undergraduate students are required to take a version of it. And there's something a little different for each sort of class of employee or student, recognizing that they're all in a little bit different position. But what it has to do with, this is part of our compliance and our with federal law and our commitment to a safe campus in regards to sexual assault, sexual violence, interpersonal violence, stalking, dating violence, domestic violence, reporting obligations, and also the kinds of role that one can play in being preventative or being part of the prevention effort on campus.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And we had another question from one of our viewers. I think it's a really great question because you all come from different academic backgrounds and you've had different experiences at the undergraduate level. So never assume that what you knew is going to be what you experience. This particular person's question is if you register for classes one semester at a time or for the entire year. And you'll actually register for classes one semester at a time. You'll work with your advisor, make sure that you follow the plan and the course requirements.
Yeah, some programs are, I think, a little bit more structured than others. So some are really going to expect everybody's going to take this set of classes in the fall and this set of classes next spring, but you're still only going to register for one semester at a time. Other programs are maybe a little more choose your own adventure and a little more flexible in those ways right from the get-go. So you'll be choosing courses that feed into your degree plan, but they might be really different from person to person.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Really good point. I think at this point, we'd want to just extend an offer, see if there are any other online questions that you want to ask. This is a really great opportunity. You have got a phenomenal panel. I am pleased to even be in their presence. But you have some really great folks with a lot of experience, both as students and as professionals in the working environment, and we'd be happy to help you out now or at some point in the future.
I think one thing I'll say while we're giving you all a chance to type something in is just that the graduate school can continue to be a resource for you throughout your time at Ball State. So, of course, a lot of the questions, a lot of the things that you need will come out of your home, your academic department, maybe from your assistantship supervisor. But the graduate school, we try to put together some programming during the year. We work with other offices on campus, like the Office of Learning and Development, to make sure that graduate students know about opportunities. So please, when the graduate school contacts you, take advantage of some of the opportunities we're sending your way. And if you have questions that you're not able to get answered in your departments or by your supervisor, please don't be afraid to reach out to us as well.
Yeah, I would just say too, as a grad student, I got really close to people in my department that I was around really often. But I myself, and I heard from a lot of other grad students, we wanted more opportunities to meet other graduate students across campus and kind of get out of our departmental bubble. And I think that the grad school is really starting to do those things. We're having meet and mingle events and other sorts of events and programs that bring graduate students from different disciplines together. I don't know if you want to talk about any of those. I don't know what's for sure happening and not, so I don't want to give too much away. But
we are really excited about a lot of the things that we are working on for this coming year. I've had a really unique opportunity to work with some fantastic folks, get some great ideas about programming, and we look forward to having a wonderful lineup of opportunities for you to get to know one another and to learn about yourself and to learn skills and techniques. And we'll be doing everything from a writing boot camp for students to even a 3-minute thesis. And I know none of you know what that is, but Google it because it is really cool.
Super cool.
Super cool. Yeah, so all sorts of opportunities and just really great things that you can do. And so we really want you to stay tuned in with the Graduate School in terms of programming and be a part of it, because this is a unique opportunity that you're getting ready to start. And it's going to be phenomenal, and we want to work to make it even more phenomenal. We do have another question, which is, what are some of the biggest takeaways from your experiences as a graduate assistant?
Oh, that's a great question to end on, too.
Yeah, it really is. And I've done several master's degrees, but I've never been a graduate assistant, so I can't really speak to that. But the three of you, perhaps?
I think mine was that I learned how to be solution-oriented. I'm going to borrow Morgan's phrase, that I think I was, when I started, I was very like, I don't know, I'm not sure. And I learned progressively to, maybe I didn't know the answer to the question, but I knew who to ask. And then I started to know the answers to the questions. And so just that growing confidence, right? Probably one of the questions you're interested in as well has to do with, have you taken away any exciting insights about budgeting that might come from thinking about how do you live on a grad student stipend and how do you get paid?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah. I'm not a GA here, so how do you get paid as a GA? Does it come every other week? Does it come once a month?
Yeah, I get paid twice a month, every 2 weeks. And that goes even through winter break. It goes starting from maybe like beginning of September is the first paycheck, and then through May, I think. So that's good. Then you just have to worry about June, July, and August. But luckily, the university does have some opportunities for you to get summer research assistantships or do hourly work somewhere on campus. So maybe not everyone will be able to take advantage of that, but there are opportunities there you can look for if you want to stay around Muncie for the summer months. Like, you know, I rent a house, 12 months out of the year. So what am I going to do in the summer? I got to stick around.
Absolutely. Another question that just came through is with regard to training, and they want to know if there are other types of mandatory training sessions that graduate assistants have to do.
The Think About It training is the mandatory one. There are orientation events, of course, before the start of the fall semester that we'll expect to see you at, especially if you're hoping to get paid. You'll need to show up for some of those. But we will be rolling out some further training about the confidentiality privacy issues that Mike was talking about that we hope you'll be able to participate in. But we're not requiring that participation this year.
Strongly encourage that, because it's going to help you to be successful.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So I think it's time for us to wrap up. Any last tidbits, thoughts that you want to share?
Don't forget to have fun.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been very serious. But, I mean, honestly, when I started the PhD program here, I was worried like everyone was going to have families or be too busy to make friends with me. I was like, well, I'll just be like a lonely PhD student for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, reading and writing. Yeah.
But it wasn't like that at all. You know, I made friends right away, and they're friends that are going to be lifelong friends after we move away from Muncie. We'll keep in touch and visit each other. And also, you know, the really good friends I've made are in my same area. We have similar research interests, so we're collaborating on like scholarship and things like that. So I'm able to mix work and fun sometimes. You know, sometimes it's more work, sometimes it's more fun.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
But yes, it really has been a great experience for me so far. Meeting people, making connections, getting experience, like growing into the kind of professional I want to be when I leave, all of those things.
Any tips, any thoughts?
You know, I just going back to the professionalism in that first year is that when I was a graduate assistant in my master's degree, practically everything that I do now, 30 some years later, I can sort of look back at I had that experience in my assistantship. I may not have done it as well or as comprehensively or as fully as I do now, but I had a chance to get that experience and do that at that time. It was truly foundational for me, and I will always appreciate my previous institution that I won't name here, but you know, it was a great beginning to a professional career for me, and I hope that everybody that's coming has can say the same about, and they should be able to say the same about their experience here at Ball State.
All
Sorry,
right.
I knew I was going to do that. So.
Awesome. Well, I think probably my one piece of advice is something that it took me, I'm not going to say how many years, but far too many years to figure out on my own. And that's, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions. We've told you a lot about a variety of different resources and folks on campus that can help you. But if you don't know, ask me. My contact information is going to be showing up on the screen here in a minute. If you have a success story that you just want to share because you're so excited and you don't know who to tell, or just something and you need to talk and decompress, or you have a question, that's what I'm here for, is to help you through the process and help you to be your most successful. So there's no such thing as a bad question. Always feel free to contact me. And I think that's it. So thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.